Andagda di Witch. This is Jess Bear with Jess Bear Chats. Glad you joined us again. I am a little nervous because I am going to be talking about a topic that put a little bit of the anger on me the other day, and I'm hoping to do it justice. And it is about using tragic circumstances to name food and drink. Um, and this was brought up in a group that I help moderate with John O'Sullivan called The Dog Does Hearth on Facebook. And basically, what it comes down to is that we in America have a couple of traditional drinks that unfortunately have some really terrible connotations with them, and I wanted to talk about the names, their history, and why they are terrible names, and how maybe we can do better. So, 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 three times. So here's the first name that is problematic. You may have heard of this when usually it's around St. Patrick's Day that you see it on menu items and such. A black and tan. So a black and tan is a drink with which is two beers, Guinness and Pale Ale, usually a Bass Pale Ale, and they're mixed together. And uh, based on a quick lookup on the internets, I found that this drink has been around since 1881, according to Oxford Dictionary, and the first recorded British use of the term was from 1889. So there is a history of this particular drink being around with that name before the history that makes it problematic. Um, for those who do not know or aren't familiar with Irish history, Black and Tans was the name of a British paramilitary group that was around in 1920s, the early 1920s, and they were there after the Irish uprising at the post office. It was the beginning of the Great Irish Rebellion, the Irish bid for independence, and so the British sent in a paramilitary group down there. They were nicknamed the Black and Tans, and it was based on the uniform that they wore. This uh, this paramilitary unit was ex-military, and some of them were also Irish, but the mass majority of them were uh, ex-British soldiers. And what followed of them coming into Ireland to help squash the rebellion was murder, was rape, was arson, essentially destroying um, Irish towns and homes and lives, um, with very little oversight from the British government. So uh, very very problematic and disgusting, violent use. And basically, a lot of people equate it to just a part of the long history of the British Empire attempting to commit uh, uh, continued genocide against the Irish peoples. So, a an example of this that if you are interested in seeing a movie that depicts this situation well, it's called The Wind That Shakes the Barley. I didn't look up the year it was made, but the very first opening scenes basically depicts the Black and Tans going into a an Irish family's home because they had gathered in a group to play a game, and group gatherings were not allowed. And basically, people ended up beaten and murdered in the very first few scenes of that movie. It's a fantastic movie once you get through the horrific violence of it, because it does talk about the Irish uprising. So, anyway, the point is that's what makes this particular name of this mixed drink very problematic. In Ireland, these drinks are called. This particular drink is called the half and half. So I recommend people start using that. The second name that's extremely problematic, extremely offensive, um, and we love it here in the United States, is called the Irish car bomb. Um, so the Irish car bomb, it's also called the Irish slammer, the Irish bomb shot, also the Irish Boilermaker. Um, it's basically a shot of Irish cream that's dropped into a half a glass of Guinness, and then the point is to drink the concoction as fast as possible before the cream curdles in the beer. Very popular in the American version of St. Patrick's Day. This drink has been around since the late 70s, and it was invented by a Connecticut bartender by the name of Charles Oates. So, so why is this particular drink problematic? Again, for those who don't know their history, this drink basically alludes directly to what is known as the Troubles that happened in Ireland in the late 60s and lasted well into the 1990s. There was a truce that was uh, technically put on in 1998, but basically this was fights along the border of Northern Ireland, which is British controlled, and the Republic of Ireland, which is um, all Ireland. Um, Now the problem is that Northern Ireland is actually a part of the island of Ireland, but it is controlled politically by the British. It has been that way for quite a long time. I did not look that up, and I probably should have. But the point is, these troubles basically had a lot to do with issues around the Constitution and much deeper political issues. But a lot of it could be said stemmed from the fact that there were portions of the Irish populace that believed that Ireland should belong to Ireland, and not to the British at all. And especially after hundreds of years of colonization and oppression, I don't think anyone could blame him for that. Unfortunately, this period of history was marked by car bombings that were very, very prolific through the border of Northern Ireland, but was also happening in the Republic of Ireland and even in parts of Britain and Europe. So this was an incredibly scary and violent time in the Irish people's history. As I said, it sounds, my understanding is that the truce happened in 1998, but some say that the fighting didn't really truly end until in the early 2000s. So, again, by some very quick research on my part, it was estimated between 3,500 to 3,600 people were killed between 1966 and 1998. 257 of those casualties were children. Um, if you watch the comedy show The Dairy Girls, which, it is a lighthearted portrayal of young people in the late 80s, early 90s living through the Troubles near the border of Derry or Londonderry, depending on which side of the border you are on. But there were a lot of parallels that Americans could probably feel some kinship with, in that there were military and police presence everywhere, especially around transportation stations, bus stations, airports. Bomb scares were a very common part of the everyday that disrupted people's lives. And this was something that is still happening in our country today due to the effects of a little something that happened on 9/11 in 2001. So, so needless to say, this was an incredibly violent part of Irish history, and there are people that are still living today. I was only 14 when the truce was officially enacted. So, as a 35-year-old, there are plenty of people who, grew up in the Troubles that are still living today. It's still a very real presence in the Irish people's minds and hearts. So, and the truce was always sort of a tenable truce, and it has become uh, even more thin and nerve-wracking due to all the talks around Brexit, because Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland have a understanding that the border people can go through without too much hassles. With Brexit, there's been talk of making that border a hard border, and that has caused tensions to begin to start to flare up. So people are very nervous and scared about what could be happening if something like the Troubles were to happen again. So why should Americans care about all of this? Why should a drink that we drink maybe once a year cause so much kerfuffle? And why should we worry about it? Well, first, just the very basic human decency standpoint. If a person tells you about a trauma that they have experienced based on violence, on brutality, on loss of loved ones, loss of security, you don't go and make a food item making fun of that event and then serve it to them, or tell them that they're overreacting, or they're being they're not making any sense. Um, so this is an issue of common decency, and recognizing that, I think, as someone who is working with Irish gods and goddesses and spirits and guides, um, this point is even more important to understand, because if you are someone who worships or works with Irish deities, um, whether it's all of them or just one of them, it's important to understand that the culture that they come from is still a living, breathing culture, that they still reside in the places of the land that they come from, and they live on in the peoples that live on that land. To ignore the connection between the people and the gods is, I think, not The first word that comes to my mind is dangerous. Um, I also feel it's ignorant. And by ignorant, I mean that people aren't taking the time to understand these connections, and therefore they're missing this element in their spiritual practice. Um, but also, I feel, and this is a personal feeling, that it does the gods disservice. Um, and I don't think you want to be dishonoring your gods by making offensive remarks about their peoples and about the struggles and trials that they have gone through and have survived. So, call me a radical optimist, but I'd like to think all of us as human beings um, can feel or at least respect the plight and pain of others. And we need to think of that when we're naming our food beverages. I think that should just kind of be a common sense thing. You know, I don't think anyone would find it particularly colorful or funny if a food item was named the Twin Towers, or if a drink was named the Trail of Tears. And in that in that same context, that context of making light of genocide and of making light of civil war, or um, yeah, I think kind of underlies um, some lack of not just human decency, but an understanding of the gods. So, what can you do about it? What can we do about it as a culture, right? I'm talking about us Americans because, yes, the half and half drink did originate outside of America, but the the Irish Boilermaker did not. That came from the United States. So, what can we do about it? Well, I think a simple thing is don't order that drink with that name anymore. You can also learn how to make these drinks at home and encourage folks to start using a better name for the drink, right? A half and half. And it's a very simple understanding of what that is. Irish Boilermaker. I'm sure nobody will care, and people who enjoy to drop the cream into the Guinness and are drinking it as fast as they can because Irish heritage. I mean, okay, maybe it's just fun. Maybe you like the drink. Totally fine. You shouldn't stop drinking and doing the thing that you like to do, but understand that we can do better in what we call these things and have a little more appreciation of the culture that we're taking these names from. So, finally, I did want to share that um, there is a Irish pub in Oakland called Sláinte. Sláinte is run by a Irish immigrant who is also a lesbian. Jackie, if you ever see this video, you are freaking awesome, and I miss the fish and chips so much, and the Powers whiskey. Haven't had that since I haven't been able to go to Sláinte. Um, but I understand that one of their rules is they will not serve anyone who orders a black and tan or a Irish car bomb because it's offensive and because you don't need that, basically. My husband even had that experience of having brought friends from a school that he was at, and they were one of his friends was trying to make a joke and say, "I want the Irish Boilermaker," and the waitress said, "I'm sorry, we do not serve that." And if you ever go to Ireland and try to order these drinks, if you don't get punched in the face, you will definitely not be getting those drinks. um, because that is still a real cultural wound um, in Ireland. And to do so would, yes, definitely show your ignorance, but would also show a real disrespect to the people that you are claiming that you a lot of people claim to descend from and who are honoring them by ordering these drinks. I guess that's what it kind of comes down to. You're not honoring anybody when you're making fun of, Irish trauma. So so basically, don't do that. Um, and use some better names. And I would also encourage you to do some better research than what I have done. Check out The Wind That Shakes the Barley, which is a fantastic account uh, that really dramatizes the situation of what the Black and Tans did and what they stood for. And, you know, for you know what? I'm actually going to ask if you know of some really good resources that talks about this history. Please email me at justbearchats@gmail.com, or please put it down in the comments so other people can have access to those resources. And I would definitely follow up on them as well, because I know that I know very little when it comes to that. I do remember going to a Flogging Molly concert in 2000, I'm going to say 2007. And I remember something, I was unfortunately very drunk, but I do remember them stopping the concert because they had just heard news about a truce or some sort of basically a laying down of arms in Ireland, and everybody cheered, and it was wonderful, and to be in that space to celebrate in that way, um, even though I didn't really know what was going on. Now I'm older. Now I have begun to understand how important that part of history was to Ireland and the Irish people. And I hope by sharing um, why it's problematic to joke about these things and use them as food names. Food names, you know, is is not helpful, and it doesn't show respect. And we can do better. And I think, hopefully, um, with some new resources, you can follow up and do some of your own learning. All right. Well, I think that's it for now. This was something that I felt really strongly about, and honestly, it took a lot for me not to just scream angrily into the video when I first saw this come up. But I hope you find it useful. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share the video. And please email me if you have comments or questions. You can also comment below. Tell me, what parts am I missing, and what other suggestions that you might have. And again, please share your resources so all of us can do a little better when it comes to sharing these cultural understandings as well as our spiritual understandings. All right, that's it for now. This is Jess Bear saying thank you, and until we meet again, may you stay safe, well, and well fed.